morning. Show me the way to plant peace with each season. Show me the way to sow love and compassion. Help me to heal myself, that I may heal those around me. Help me to serve our greater self. Show me the day love triumphs over reason. Show me the day right where my heart is beating. Help me to reach myself, that I may reach those around me. Help me to reach our greater self. Help me to reach our greater self. Our greater self, yeah. Show me our greater self. Show me. Show me the way in the joy and the freedom. Show me the way I'm willing and able. Help me to teach myself, that I may reach those around me. Help me to reach our greater self. Show me the way to plant peace with each season. Show me the way to sow love and compassion. Yeah. Help me to heal myself, that I may heal those around me. Help me to reach my greater self. You help me to reach our greater self. Our greater self. Show me. Our greater self. You show me. Our greater self. You show me. Our greater
The theme for this year is to everything there is a season, there's a time for everything. And when we really realize that time is a construct that human beings created, we get to move into the time and then recreate the time. So this month we're saying that this is a time to begin again. And any time is a time to begin again, but we're going to practice beginning again in January. But at any time you can begin again. But we should always be in the beginning, because the universe is in the beginning. If it's timeless and it said there's a beginning, then we're in the beginning all the time. So we're going to practice that. And to practice beginnings, you need to know when to begin. So there's 3 times to begin. First of all, begin again when you've had an ending of any kind. If you're going to end it, just end it. Sometimes it's by choice and sometimes by force, but just God bless this ending, move on, what do I want to begin? Second time to have a beginning is when you are uncomfortable. discomfort, being uncomfortable, feeling trapped, is not a sign to change conditions, it's a sign to grow, to outgrow what's trapping you. So let's just do a little biology. Let's talk lobsters. Lobsters, like most crustaceans, outgrow their shells. And when their shells get tight, that's a sign to the crustacean, or the lobster at this point, to go under a rock, drop the shell, because the rock's protecting them, go under the rock, drop the shell, and grow a new shell that's bigger. And when they grow into that shell and it gets tight, then they go under a rock, drop the shell, and grow a new shell. When things get tight for human beings, there's a tendency to say, well, I guess this is what I have to live with. We should have the brains of a lobster. Really. It's like, it's uncomfortable. How am I to grow? That's a different question than what am I to put up with? Totally different question. So to begin again, you're being called to begin again when you feel uncomfortable, things are tight, you feel squished, grouchy. I've noticed that when I'm grouchy, it's because things feel too tight. The third time to begin again is if you want to thrive, not survive, thrive. Because there's a constant evolution of the real self. When you know your real self, there'll be constant evolution of that. And I was actually inspired by this many years ago when I was reading Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, who was a survivor of one of the concentration camps. And he was also a psychotherapist. And he was giving a lecture in front of a lot of psychotherapists. And he said, too often we help people get over something. And we think we've accomplished something. They get over a breakup, they get over a heartache, they get over a trauma. And when we think that they have arrived, but we have to look at them as evolving species and evolving people, evolving spirits, and thriving is a constant process of unfoldment. It's always happening. So they don't just get well, they get healthier. You don't just get a job, you get more satisfied. And you can always be more satisfied. You can always be more fulfilled. You can always feel more accomplishment. There's no end to what you can be expressing. And express. Judge Thomas Troward said it this way: my mind is the center of divine operation, and the divine operation is always for expansion and fuller expression. My mind is a center of divine operation. The divine operation is always for expansion and fuller expression. And he wrote that probably in 1890 maybe, which is interesting because I don't think that he knew yet that what we can prove is that the universe is expanding and going out of itself. And yet, so for him, expansion and further expression was an intuitive realization. And if what Meister Eckhart said, which wrote, somebody's going to tell me later, email me. He was either writing in the 13th or the 14th century, but that long ago, who cares about 100 years? Anyway, so he was a theologian and a Christian mystic. And he said, God is that which is centered everywhere and circumference is nowhere. So that universe is centered in us. And it's always trying to expand and more fully express. So today is a good day to begin that realization, to begin working out of that instead of what we might work out of if we weren't so conscious, if we weren't paying attention. I have to talk about the one thing. That's the talk title for today, the one thing. How many of you saw City Slickers? So for those of you that saw City Slickers, would you recommend that everybody see City Slickers? Oh, it's a good one. It's one of those classics when they have classic movies. Jack Palance won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in City Slickers. Did you know that? How many of you saw him take his award? One hand push-up. Have you seen Jack Palance? He looked old probably at 20. To use a horse term, he looked like he'd been rode hard and put away wet. For all the time that I'd ever known him. And then he's like really old and he's looking wetter and more rode hard. But he wanted to prove when he got up there and got his award that he's not really an old guy, so he drops to the floor and with one hand starts doing these push-ups like this, and everybody's going, ah! It was just the face. Amazing. So Jack Palance and Billy Crystal, the characters they're playing, are having a conversation about life, and eventually Jack Palance says, well, it's all about the one thing. And Billy Crystal says, well, what's the one thing? And I was too. And Jack Palance said, well, you got to figure it out. But I want to share with you one thing that I think is important. If you want 2018 to be the best year of your life so far, there's one thing that I want to get across to you, and that is to live intentionally. Live intentionally, not accidentally. Show up as a creator, not a coper. This go with the flow stuff is just silly. The only thing that really goes with the flow is a dead fish. Everything else swims and has intention. Even if it's going with the flow, if it's alive, it's going with the flow intentionally. Not just, I wonder where I'm going to show up. Have intentions in 2 areas of your life. Begin every creative process with an intention. An intention at the beginning of every creative process will make it beneficial. And also, know that intention is the motivation for every action. Whether you're aware of it or not, intention is the motivation for every action. And I'll get into that a little bit more later. But first I want to define intention. Look it up in just Google it. Well, the short version is aim and end. Intention is an end. It's not a goal or how to get there, it's an end. You're aiming for the end. Judge Thomas Troward said that in that end is the means. So you're not aiming for the way to get there or how to get there or the steps to get there, you're aiming for the end. And in that end, if you hold it, the means will be revealed. Another definition is what one has in mind to bring about. You want to bring this about? Doesn't that sound creative? I'm going to bring this about. I'm holding it in mind. I'm going to bring it about. Human beings have the gift of imagination and will, and they can intend something new, imagine it, and hold it in mind, and it is going to unfold or come about. Now, let's talk about those 2 ways that I said you could use intention as the beginning of a creative process and also the motivation for every action. So let's begin with the creative process. George Bernard Shaw had said, and actually I thought it was one of the Kennedys, I thought it was Robert Kennedy, I got feedback. It was Robert Kennedy? No, Robert Kennedy quoted George Bernard Shaw. George Bernard Shaw says, you see things as they are and say, why? But I dream of things that have never been and say, why not? George Bernard Shaw. And Robert Kennedy. And others who are smart. And we'll just say, because you know people. You don't do this, I'm sure. But you know people are always going, why? How'd that happen? What's going on? That's normal. But what's spiritual is to say, this is the life, this is the world I aim for. I will hold that end in mind and say, why not? It's a difference. There's a big difference in that. So you could let yourself imagine just stop in 2018. What if you let yourself imagine and intend that you could live up to your spiritual potential? What if the aim was that this year you live up to your spiritual potential? And to give you an idea of your spiritual potential, I want to quote Rumi, and it will be up behind me so you can read along. Rumi, who was a Sufi mystic, also writing about the same time as Meister Eckhart, said, "You were born with potential. You were born with goodness and trust. You were born with ideals and dreams. You were born with greatness. You were born with wings. You were not meant for crawling, so don't. You have wings. Learn to use them and fly. Be your old big self." Many people in this room know people, who think the following. They think that they are accidents of nature. They think that they are subjects to the laws of luck and chance. They think that they can be pushed around easily. They think that their dreams are meaningless. They think that they have to live an ordinary life. They think they have no wings, and they have forgotten how to fly. They've stayed grounded, and then they grumble about it. Back to Lazarus, there's Lazarus, and there's the Christ. One says fly, one says, that's not so bad. Gotten kind of used to it. Human beings have the spiritual gift to know who they are and fully express themselves. So just take a deep breath. Let's have this be a little bit interactive. Take a deep breath. If you own the idea that you are a center of divine operation, if you own the idea that you are the place where God shows up, something within you is divine, longing to express and to raise up that which is asleep. How would you more fully express that idea in 2018? What areas of your life would come alive, would become awake? Let yourself know that now. Take a deep exhale. Come back to the room. If you were inspired to bring that spirit of life more into your life, great. If you weren't, stay open. It'll probably show up when you least expect it. You'll be driving or waiting at a grocery line, but it will show up if you ask. I want my mantra this year to be imagine greater, imagine greater, imagine greater. No matter where I am, I can imagine greater, because that's thriving. There's no end to the good. There's no end to peace. There's no end to well-being. So imagine and intend how not only your life would be, but how the world would be. Imagine that you can imagine how the world would be, how you want it to be, not complaining about how it is. Wayne Dyer, who wrote the book, our book of the month, The Power of Intention. Of course, this is an old copy, hardbound, but we have another one. It's the book of the month. Wayne Dyer says, that which offends you only weakens you. So we have to come out of not being offended, but being creative, creating what we want. And the Borg said it better. Resistance is futile. So just stop fighting and start imagining. Now, I want to get to this other way that we can use intention, and that is to know and realize that intention is the motivation of every action, whether you're aware of it or not. It's true. When you really look at it, when I'm acting a certain way, there was something behind it. Now, the intention can come as a conscious intention, or if you're not conscious of your intention, it could be one that's acted out of an unhealed past, an intention that came from an unhealed past, or it could be an unconscious intention to just deal with what shows up and see if I can, once again, go with the flow. See what happens. Be flexible. Without an outcome in mind. And if you don't have an outcome in mind, you're not being creative, you're just coping. You're either coping or being creative. Based on, do you have an intention for this conversation? Do you have an intention for that meeting? Do you have an intention for that relationship? Do you have an intention for that thing that's calling you? I was reading a book on high performance, and I get all these things in the email. I must be on somebody's great list, because boy, I get offers. Here, for only this much money. No, actually, I was given a free evaluation. That gets you every time, doesn't it? Take this test, and it'll tell you if you're a high performer. It was by an author who works with high performers. And the high performers measure like 4.9 to 5 out of a 1 to 5 scale. So I took the test. I'm a 3.6. I know. So I bought the book, which told me nothing. Well, it told me things that I could be doing if I was a high performer. It didn't show how to get there. That's an $800 or $900 course. But I did buy the book. And I read the book, and there's only one thing that stuck with me, and it must be important. It must be the thing I needed to know. And that is that high performers finish whatever they're doing. They finish it, they breathe out, they have a moment in between, and then they go into their next activity, but they have an intention for every activity. Before they answer the phone and they know who it is, they have an intention for how that conversation will go. If they're going into a meeting, they have an intention for how they will show up and what they would like to accomplish. They have an intention for how they're going to show up as a spouse, as a child, as a parent. They have an intention for how they're going to do their workouts and what they want to have accomplished in their body. They intend everything. And then when they're done with that, they take a deep breath and start again. And what I realized is that I have intentions, but I don't just focus. I used to. I don't anymore. I'm trying very hard to stop because I read the book. I've tried very hard to not think about this as I go into this, still thinking about this. Oh, and then there's this. And pretty soon I'm juggling all of this hyper mental activity. And there's less focus. And even if I intended, where would I be intending for and about? It's actually relieved a lot of stress. I feel better. It works. So I just want to give you a little background of how this works. Before I even read the book, I was inspired to work with our small group leaders in Beyond Limits and have the small group leaders and myself intend an end for the class. So we would gather together, hold hands, and see how each participant would be after class. We would see light in their eyes. We would see them with hope, with inspiration. We would see them with new tools. We saw the end. We intended an end, and you know what? It was happening. We weren't just showing up and there for people. No, we wanted something. We demanded something of the universe, and it started to show up. Now, I'm not very far ahead, but I'm like a few weeks ahead of whatever I talk about. I'm sure my staff wishes I was much farther ahead because I'm already being asked about Easter. I mean, I just got done with Coptic Christmas. Easter? Anyway, What has showed up in my mind through most of December is I really want us all to thrive, to live in thrival instead of survival, or plateaued, making it, getting by. By thrive, I mean I would love to see more and more and more of us make choices based on our heart's desire, not on our bank account. And then what I believe is if you make a choice based on your heart, the bank account will follow, because we're creative and we can be creative. Now that takes a leap. Not everyone's there, but everyone can move there, which is thriving, which is constant, never-ending movement in a way that is healthier. And I know that that's what I want to support our community in being and living. And so I want to give you my first Thrive tip. And probably every time I speak, I'll give a Thrive tip, while I'm still waiting for more downloads as to how to make this happen, because I want to make it happen. And I'm getting glimpses, but I don't want to move until I really have the inspiration that this is the right thing to do. Because in that end of everybody thriving, there is the means, but I don't want it to be my means, I want it to be the universe's means. But what the thing that does happen is I'll give a Thrive tip. And the first Thrive tip is to be grateful. Emma Curtis Hopkins said, if you really want to have a healing presence, which is a wholeness presence, whole, complete, and perfect. When people were healed, they were made whole. If you want to have the consciousness of wholeness, praise everything. And another way of saying it in our vernacular is to be grateful for everything. And the more grateful you are, the more it expands your heart. Eric Butterworth said, a grateful heart draws great things to it. And it makes sense, and yet it's something that we can forget to do. There were 2 people at our retreat over the last week, on Monday through Thursday, and 2 of them had huge turnarounds in their life. One going from not even able to get out of bed to what they would say is 95% of their health is back. And the catalyst, the thing that they could do when they couldn't do anything, they couldn't get up out of bed, they couldn't care for themselves. The first thing that they could do is use their mind to be grateful. And they were grateful for this and grateful for that, and then grateful for this and grateful for that, and gratitude started to build, and so did their life. And another person used gratitude because her whole family was in distress about someone else's illness. And she just used gratitude to be a high presence, a high vibration, instead of falling into the low vibration, which is where disease happens. So gratitude, 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 gratitude. No matter where you are, be grateful and be grateful and be grateful. Before I end and go into prayer, are there any questions? And I really have valued the questions we've had so far. Amazing questions. First service, we had an amazing question. So whatever your question is, it's important. Who has a question either about intentions or thriving? I guess those are the topics of the day. Intentions, thriving, better life, how to use the science of mind, how to overcome. Here we have someone. You can't ask how much I weigh, that's off the bed. I was trying to say, I would say I'm open to everything, but not that.
Okay, so my question is, I have fibromyalgia, and sometimes I can't move, and sometimes I'm not functional, and sometimes, especially my arms give me trouble, so I can't do things like brush my teeth or brush my hair. And when I'm feeling like that, and I can't do self-care, it's very difficult to live in gratitude because I'm unfunctional. How do I pull out of that? It's been like a 10-year struggle.
Oh, come here. No, sit down.
I mean, and lots of times I'm fine and I'm on meds and I do all kinds of stuff, but what about when I can't do life?
I wish you could have heard this gentleman's story where he couldn't move either. He couldn't have, his wife left him because he was so sick, and he left him in a house it was the middle of the summer. It was so hot. It was sweltering, and they had fleas, and he was covered with fleas. Could not move, even to brush them off. So there are places where we can all get where we get that low. But your mind is still at choice. Within you is the kingdom or the realm. I'm going to move that so we're not buzzing. Within you is the kingdom or the realm. Well, that means power. Do you realize that when that word was spoken, the kingdom was a power? The king was a power, kingdom was a power. There is a power within you that can bring harmony, and it's by choice. So you can always choose to say, I can wiggle my thumb, I'm really grateful. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but you find the smallest thing and start to give gratitude for it. Now, the mind says, no, I can't. I can't, not now. Maybe later, when things are better. But if you remember Reverend Deborah saying that we believe that the kingdom of heaven is within us and it's now, that means there is power now to make a choice. And don't make yourself wrong, but begin with, because that's also a choice. I'm going to teach self-mastery in April. We always have choice. And we always have the ability to say, I have no choice, which is a choice. So I want to support you and love you, and I know that you have a wonderful husband, you have a family, and they will support you in realizing that when things get tough, there's still something to be grateful for. I mean, I've seen your lovely husband. I've seen your life. You have a lot to be grateful for. I know. And it hurts in a way to think that this physical condition overcomes all that. That puts you in hell, doesn't it? Yeah. So isn't it wonderful that you want to be here and you want to be free? And part of the freedom, the first thing is, if I was listening to both of those people, and maybe I listened to them for you, is to start paying attention to what works. Maureen's not here today. Once in a while, Maureen Manley shows up. Maureen Manley, when we first moved into this facility almost 20 years ago, 25, 20, I don't know, a long time ago. She met me with a cane that she could hardly see, and her husband had to help her in because she was having a bout of MS so badly. And what she did was she took this teaching and she started to put her attention on what works, because she realized that people with MS often think all the time about what just that attribute of their body they just lost. And then she would go to small groups and they'd say, well, if you lost this, this will happen next. She just didn't go there. She kept putting her attention on the thing that did work, and the thing that did work, and being grateful for the thing that did work. She now races bicycles. Oh yeah, she's a racer. That's why she's not here on Sundays.
So physically, she's like focusing on her physical stuff, because like
physically, physically she focuses on what does work.
Okay.
I mean, she was.
I'm so good at it in my life. Like, I've got the husband. I'm about to have the entire lifestyle that I've always wanted. We're like so close, but the body stuff is just my.
So then she had a life too. In fact, actually, during this whole time, her husband left her because he didn't want to be married to a woman with MS.
Yeah.
Everything fell apart, but she kept putting her attention on what worked, being grateful for what worked, being grateful for what worked. Okay. She races bicycles. She had been on the Olympic team when she got MS. She now races again. And she'll say, and some days I can't. Then she shows up. She doesn't show up here often. She's racing. She's out there. So I don't have your condition, but everybody has a bugaboo, right? You all have areas where the bugs are booing you. And your bugaboo happens to be physical. But it doesn't mean these principles don't work. God made these. They are like gravity. You use them, they will work. But a lot of times we use them for a little bit, and then we go, but this is too big. Well, it's not too big for God. Right. Okay. Do you know that she then got on the MS council for Washington and took our empowerment groups on how to do facilitation, and she changed the way they do MS small groups to stop putting attention on what didn't work. So you are going to help other women.
What?
Maybe it's bigger than you.
Yeah.
Maybe this isn't about you. Maybe this is about you getting well and helping other women get well.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
So you're going to go off and be grateful?
I'll be grateful.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's look at Rumi once again. Only we're going to change this, okay? Instead of saying you were born, we're going to turn this into an affirmation, which I can really do easily, but except for that last part, I got to change that real quickly. I hope I learned first service. All right, so here we go. I was born with potential. I was born with goodness and trust. I was born with ideals and dreams. I was born with greatness. I was born with wings. I was not meant for crawling, and I don't. I have wings. I'm learning to use them and fly, and so it is.